Sirenia.
Sirenia is an order of mammals that was named after sirens, beautiful singing mermaids in Greek mythology. The sailors that named them must have been pretty drunk or in need of an optometrist because they weren't seeing beautiful women in the waves, but rather just as beautiful, wrinkly gray or sometimes brown creatures, maybe with a less beautiful singing voice.
Sirenians are most closely related to furry little African creatures called hyraxes from the order Hyracodia. Sirenia and Hyracodia are both closely related to elephants in the order Proboscidea, but Sirenia don't share very many common traits with hyrax or with elephants.
Some people think manatees are ugly, but we think they're pretty cool, and so does Miss Lee, right? They have 2 flippers, no legs, and a vestigial pelvis. Their ears have been described as tiny pits, but they need ears because they communicate with chirps and barks. Sirenia have dense bones with no marrow to assist in control of buoyancy. Manatees' teeth get replaced throughout their life, while dugong's teeth get ground down to nubs so that on average, in their older years, they only end up with 2.
Sirenians have super interesting behavioral characteristics too. The relationship between a mother and her child is the strongest social bond. Sirenians are polygamous and solitary animals, but their gestation period can be up to 14 months. That's over a year. When Sirenian babies are born, they have been seen riding on their mother's back, which we think is really cute.
Sexual selection behaviors of Sirenians vary between manatees and dugongs. Manatees exhibit female choice as well as male-male competition, as the female uses evasive swimming, causing the smartest and fastest males to follow her. Unlike manatees, dugongs defend territories and the females follow, instead of the other way around.
In the Trichechus family, there are 3 different species of manatee that all live in the Atlantic Ocean or its tributaries: Manatus in Florida and the Caribbean, Inunguis in the Amazon, and Senegalensis in West African rivers.
All 3 species are herbivorous bottom dwellers, but Amazonian and African manatees are very special because they are riverine, not marine, like the West Indian manatees. But no matter where they live, all manatees have the conservation status of threatened. One of the reasons why they're so at risk is that they need very specific temperature ranges.
From the hottest required habitat to the coldest required habitat is only a difference from 25 degrees Celsius to 18 degrees Celsius, which is still a very small range. Anything colder or hotter is fatal.
The other extant family in the Sirenia order is Dugongidae. They're found only in the tropical Pacific, which is Oceania, Asia, and East Coast Africa. The easiest way to tell the difference between the Sirenian is the dugong's bilobed tail versus the paddle tail of the manatee.
Also, dugongs travel alone or in pairs. They're strictly bottom feeders, so they eat only sea grasses. A fun fact is that they can breathe by standing on their tail with their heads above the water. Unfortunately, due to human hunting for sale of skin and oils, their ecological status is vulnerable.
Save the dugongs!
Stellar sea cow were very special Sirenians. They were the only Sirenians to live in Arctic waters. They inhabited the Bering Sea between Alaska and Russia. Amazingly, they could grow to be up to 8 meters long, way bigger than your average manatee. Unfortunately, due to overhunting, they died out in the mid-1700s. This means that no one other than Georg Steller studied them extensively.
But we do know that they were more closely related to dugongs than manatees because they have a bilobed tail, just like the dugongs. Also, they lived in the Pacific Ocean, not the Atlantic Ocean.
Way back in time, Sirenians walked on land.
Duh, they descended from mammals.
Recently, fossils were found in Jamaica of a quadrupedal Sirenian called a pezosiren. Fossil research concludes that the pezosiren actually spent much of its time in the water. So, the pezosiren exemplifies the shift between terrestrial mammals and aquatic mammals with its amazing intermediate evolutionary form.
Because manatees and dugongs evolved from one common quadrupedal ancestor to 2 different families, Dugongidae and Trichechiddae, they are a great example of adaptive radiation.
Dugongidae and Trichechiddae are also separated by ecological barriers, allopatric speciation, as they have evolved separately in different oceans, dugongs in the Pacific and manatees in the Atlantic. The Amazonian manatee and the African manatee think that they're super special because they're the only riverine Sirenians, and they live in a freshwater environment. This is an example of an ecological reproductive isolating mechanism.
An example of convergent evolution is present between dugongs and sharks. Dugongs, unlike manatees, have evolved a fluked or bilobed tail just like a shark or whale tail. But since sirenians aren't related to sharks, they have co-evolved to have similar tails.
Wow! Let's talk about vestigial features. On manatees' two front flippers, there can be up to 4 nails, similar to elephant toenails, as well as the toenails of hyraxes, an extant mammal species that Sirenia are closely related to. These nails show the evolutionary relation of manatees to other animals that are alive today.
An example of commensalism, a type of symbiosis, occurs between manatees and algae when it grows on the manatees' backs. It benefits the algae, but doesn't help or harm the manatee. This is not coevolution because the algae doesn't cause the manatees to change in any way. Anyway, why are sirenians called sea cows?
Actually, sea cows is a terrible name for sirenians, at least from an evolutionary perspective. Manatees are not closely related to cows at all, but they are biologically related to hyraxes. However, morphologically, sea cows look a lot more like cows than fuzzy rabbit-shaped animals.
Time for some fun facts. The average lifespan of a manatee is 73 years.
Wow, that's long. But guess what? The gestation period of Sirenia is 14 months. Talk about a long pregnancy.
You know what else takes a while?
What?
Manatees on the go. They travel 3 to 10 kilometers an hour.
That's as slow as my grandma drives. The deepest recorded dive of a manatee is 10 meters. That shows that they live to be in really shallow waters. Have any revolutionary questions you want answered? Ask Team Symbiosis after class.